More potent.
A little bit more potent.
DMT is not that all-fired potent. It takes, 10, 20, 50, no more, 50, 100 milligrams.
50 to 70
and some of these
milligrams.
we're getting into maybe at 20 and 30 milligrams, but not active oil. You have to get up to a certain degree of shrubbery on the nitrogen to get oil activity.
And how many of these compounds do you imagine there are that are
At
simple
casually, you can make
variants?
30, 40, 50.
Why do you suppose it is that this fast-acting, easily manufactured, spectacular hallucinogen is so rarely met in the underground?
I don't know. I've heard that it's there in some quantity. I heard about a seizure in Boston, I believe it was of ayahuasca. And they seized it on the basis that it contained DMT.
Right, that was the Santo Daime people from Brazil. But, we live in a society where people jump out of airplanes and hang by bungee cords over bridges. And DMT, which is always described as an easy synthesis,
It is extremely easy.
is just not there.
I have no idea.
It violates one of these economic laws,
basic laws,
Gresham or Graham or somebody. Something that I've always wanted to ask you, which is, unlike me, you seem remarkably resistant to what I call the implications. I mean, how can you just do these things over and over again and not be nutty as a fruitcake?
So?
Well, are you?
I think I relaxed in any event.
But unlike me, you don't feel the need to rave about that aspect of it.
Not particularly. I'd rather quietly stay half in the closet and continue doing what I'm doing.
But you've probably seen more uncharted internal landscape than half of mankind put together. I mean, that would not be an immodest claim.
They're a little bit charted now.
Well, a very little bit.
Very little, that's right. But the seeds are there to be used by anyone else. That's the reason for the book, just to get it all written into a documented form.
But it always puzzles me. I mean, I think Hoffman and Wasson, and certainly to some degree Schultes, to some degree you, everybody says, well, I'm just a humble botanist, or I'm just a hard-working workbench chemist. Nobody wants to actually say, this must be very, very important. Because it's so uniquely beyond ordinary expectation.
Yes, but the importance is going to take a long time to realize. What you can't build without the tools, and you have to have the tools, and these are the tools that allow the building to be done. I'm not a builder. I'm a tool maker. And that's probably one of the reasons I have not described a lot of landscapes. Others see them differently.
If we could compare it to the invention of the telescope, probably within 50 years of the invention of the telescope, the major solar system new paradigms were put in place. This seems very elusive. It seems hard for us to go beyond simply saying it exists, it's really far out, and then we sort of fall silent. What do you think about that?
I think the silence is in part imposed upon us by a very unsympathetic authority body. And maybe it's just as well. Because that way a lot of work can be done and sort of recorded for posterity. And the time the pendulums swing, they will swing back. And the time will come when this work will be used, research will be done with these tools.
Obviously you believe in it strongly. What would you say to a critic who said, what's so great about this? Are you and your friends in any significant way different from the rest of humanity?
No. And I don't see why it would be critical. I'm not offending him. I can see no way in which I'm offending him. I'm quietly doing my little alchemist thing at home.
But you really must think that it does make a difference.
I think it does. I think it will.
It will.
I don't think it does now.
So we really are cursed with being pioneers.
Yeah.
It's not so bad.
No,
it's not so bad.
It has a nice.
I mean, they'll hang your picture in the main hall years hence and say, these were giants.
I would rather have my picture hanging in the main hall than me hanging in the main
Well,
hall.
some people manage both.
That's
And you may end up that way, too.
Oh, well, it's a short, happy life, but it's kind of neat.
Well,
But this is your territory, too. What's your feeling? Do you feel that that's a fair...
I think that I have always, from the very first psychedelic experience, had the uncanny intuition that, yes, this has been around for 50,000 years, but it's somehow going to be critically important in our lifetime, that we will need it for something, maybe just to think our way out of the mess that we're getting into.
Okay. But if it's needed, we have it.
Yes.
That's the beauty. The tool is there for the time when the need is obvious. And this may be our lifetime.
So essentially what you're doing is you're placing tools on the shelf. Screwdrivers for screws that haven't been invented yet.
Exactly that. Except it's a good tool. Its use will depend upon someone who has that particular view of need.
Well, it's a wonderful thing. Where do you hope to be in 10 years or so with all of this? Have you
Probably starting on a third book.
Do you think, I know you're working on a book about legalization and...
Not actually. I'm working with a group who is more or less funded to make arguments that would be raised, to address arguments to be raised in the legalization process. What would be the answer of how drugs would be legalized? How would they be made available? Should it be an open supermarket or should it be under some sort of governmental control? And it's a research, more than that, a policy group
study
setting up for that. I think it's futile in the present state.
In terms of practical impact.
I don't think anyone's going to seriously entertain legalization. So it may be a fueled process, but it's a fun process. Because in the process you begin evaluating your own relationship with drug law, drug regulation, drug control.
If you were in charge of it, how do you see it happening? I mean, are there drugs you would keep legal, or do you think it should be...
What I would do if I were running, I would keep certain laws that would protect people of innocence. I would have absolutely no drug with children who are of too young an age. God knows what that is, maybe.
16, 18, 21.
Maybe alcohol model.
Right.
Absolutely unallowed giving drugs to anyone without their consent. Informed consent, knowledge, education. I would make absolutely available at all levels about propaganda, restriction, information that is factual about drugs. Then I'd open the drugstore. And you people, will they overuse? Maybe. But I think that would very quickly dampen itself out to maybe about what we have now. But you have removed the criminality, removed the violence, removed the entire social disruptiveness that these drug laws have caused.
Would you encourage the government to see these drugs as a vehicle for gaining tax revenue, or do you think the government should stay off that?
Probably some tax revenue would be valid, as with other drugs of abuse, other things of abuse.
Similarly to alcohol and tobacco.
It's a good model, and perhaps it's a valid one.
Well, that's pretty much what I suggested in my book, but I agree with you that it's easy to sit down and come up with a fine plan, overcoming the political hurdles of an American...
Many people have too much to benefit on the laws being what they are, and even becoming more intense. And until you change that motivation, that reward...
Yes, well, the most cynical and the most naive people in America are keeping the drug problem going. The most cynical by dealing and importing drugs, and the most naive through the kind of Christian terror of...